I just had to reboot everything and it went funny on me. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Mike. Welcome to Talking Niagara this morning. Um, and yeah, hey, we've been talking about these defections
Defections?
from the Conservatives recently. Resignation and
Oh, there's only been one.
yeah.
There's only been
Well,
one.
I've been hearing rumours, and it's only rumours, mind you, that there's three or four other that are considering leaving.
Yeah,
Right?
there's this rumor mill. The source of that is because any of the conservatives that are more moderates are being uh,
Yeah,
continually hounded by the
yeah,
liberals.
I know.
Let's put it this way.
Yeah.
So they're
Well,
doing what they're supposed to do is hound the heck out of them
yeah, the
to
things I've
cross the
been
floor.
hearing.
So I don't know how many will actually cross the floor.
Yeah, the things I've been hearing is they're not moving across the floor, but they'll be moving to an independent status, or
Yeah,
maybe
that's a
or maybe
possibility
even a new
too.
party.
And
Yeah, but anyway, it's
well,
these are only
that
rumors.
is yet to be seen. That is yet to be seen. They're more likely. I'm not so sure they'll cross the floor. If I was a discontented conservative, I would have just gone
Independent,
independent.
right?
That's what I would have done.
Or create your own new party.
That would be so super difficult without a whole lot of help.
Well,
I wouldn't be able to do it.
yeah, yeah.
There,
I got that, but
yeah. Well, you see what happened when the People's Party of Canada they have hardly almost no representation in voting and or anything. They maybe get about 4% of in this area. Got about 4% of the vote. So if you wanted to stay in Parliament and you wanted to satisfy your own constituents, you could tell them, look, I'm normally a conservative, but I don't like what the conservatives are doing, the party, where it's going. So I will be a conservative independent. Therefore, I will not be shackled to the party, but I will still, in most cases, vote in a conservative way.
I will vote what is
That's
right for my constituents.
Same thing with liberals. What?
Yeah. In other words, I will vote what is right for my constituents.
Yes. And you could say, well, conservatives voted me in. I'm still basically a conservative, a right of center guy, but I don't like what the party is standing for or how it's being run. And I don't think it's in the best interest of my constituencies to follow in line with this particular party policy.
And as I say,
that's happened before. Like I said, there was that famous guy Nunziata, the liberal guy. He stayed in Parliament for a long time as an independent.
Yeah, as I say, this is only rumors anyway, and rumors often don't pan out, but sometimes they do. Right?
I know they do have a rigorous campaign of trying to talk a lot of conservatives across the aisle. But I remember, like the liberals could be pretty appealing to a moderate conservative because they're using all the conservative talking points.
Yeah,
we mentioned this before.
Oh yeah, I know.
Right, all the things the conservatives said that we should be doing. That's exactly what Carney's doing. Right, the carbon tax is gone. Okay, so that's gone. So Polyev doesn't have that to speak about. Opening mines, getting regulations reduced, fast tracking mines and oil pipelines and all these other things that the liberals under JT couldn't do because they were too woke. But they can do it now because they've got a leader who is a practical man. He's a capitalist and a practical man. He has his ideologies, of course, but fundamentally, he is a very practical, economic-driven person who has adopted many of the talking points of the conservatives. So if you are a slightly right of center conservative, and you see that what they're talking about is exactly what you wanted just 1 year ago, you're going to say, okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. All right, moving on. Okay, Premier forward to eliminate fixed elections. Basically, he wants to go back to the old system where the Premier was actually in control of when the election was called. Obviously there would be a time limit on elections, but there would be an election after 4 years if the time limit didn't expire.
I don't know why he thinks he needs it. He's super popular right now, and I cannot see any rising star among the Liberals or the NDP that's going to challenge him in the next 5 years. I can't see it. They really got to get working now if they're going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
He wants to change it back to the old method when, we found this when Bob Rae was in government. He became very unpopular right away, but he knew that he could stretch it to 5 years, because that was sort of the tradition back then. You could push it past 4, you could go to 5 years before you had to call an election. Otherwise,
you could pick the month of the year to do the election. It
didn't help Bob Rae, and I see what he's trying to do here. He's just trying to be able to balance things up to make sure that they're all in his favor at the right time when he wants it. What he doesn't want, he knows the whims of the electorate. So if there's a couple of bad months or he gets caught in a scandal and it's time for election time, well, that's just bad timing. So I can understand why he wants to control the time of it. And once he's done, if he gets locked out, I'm pretty sure all the other leaders would like the same thing too thereafter.
Yeah.
Is it in the service of democracy, though? That's what we have to talk about.
Well, and
does it serve democracy?
Yeah. And this was enacted under McGuinty 22 years ago. And the funny thing is that half of European, the European Union, for example, has fixed term limits for its elections. Many of the European Union nations also have fixed term limits nowadays.
Well, we don't have a term limit for the leader. That's up to the Conservatives or the Liberals or the NDP or whatever other party.
Fixed term elected term. So basically, it's 4 years. It's 4 years after the point at which you got elected.
Yeah, it seems to be a method that works for the United States, but we find frustration both in Reagan and Obama about those 4-year limits.
Yeah,
Reagan was very frustrated by it because he felt he could have won another election at least, and he pointed that out. He said that you should kind of redress that now. The whole reason why they have the 2-term limits is because the Republicans were very afraid there will be another FDR come along.
Yeah,
FDR won 4 elections in a row. The Republicans did not want that to happen again. And they felt that the Democrats were more likely to get a populist leader. Ha, ha, ha. That didn't work too well, did it? Because now we have a populist leader that's a Republican. But the Republicans thought that Democrats were more likely to have a populist leader that could get more than 2 terms. So in came, Article 22, that you can only have 2 terms.
Yeah,
so that seems to be working pretty well in the States, and I don't know what kind of term limits they have on their congressmen and senators. They might not have ones at all. But up here, we don't have any particular term limit for prime minister, because the prime minister is picked by his party or the premier in Ford's case. Yeah. So what Ford wants to do basically is he just wants he sees a bit of a dynasty going on there. I think he thinks he's very popular at the moment. Him facing off against Trump, that kind of thing. He's very smart. He sees what the political trends are. That's why he had the snap election before, kind of before the federal election kind of thing, because he didn't want that kind of thing. He didn't want to have political collisions between the feds and the province and getting them all mixed up. So he's just planning his future very, very well. He's learning the hard way a lot of times on some of his, when he the green belt thing. He does show himself to have a bit of he is controlled by his big money backers, not controlled, but swayed by his big money backers, and they've got him into some trouble, particularly with opening up the green spaces and so on. So I don't know what his plan is, and I don't know if this is so bad for the Canadian Ontario electoral.
I'm not fussed either way, especially if there's an ultimate limit, i.e. you can't go more than 5 years.
I know why McGuinty came up with this, because he promised widespread voting change, reform. Once he got in, he realized that those reforms would not serve his party too well, so he didn't do much with it, and that angered the people, in which he promised he would propose those. So he put it to a referendum. He put it to a referendum and made sure that nobody knew what the heck anyone was talking about. If you remember those days, I do.
I wasn't here.
This is pathetic. He says, okay, we're going to give everybody a chance to vote on voter reform. And he left everybody with misinformation and everything. The people that were trying to sell it were sort of the least able to do such a thing. I remember listening to them on the radio and so on, and trying to read about it. Once he got in, he decided that I can't let that happen, because I'll lose the next election. These reforms I proposed. Yeah. So he made sure that they died in the referendum, but he had to do something, and I think that something was to put term limits on the government.
This is actually one of the questions about about the whole thing about electoral reform. We've got a system that works. I'm not saying it's perfect, right? Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's perfect. We have a system that works. And whenever anybody proposes, oh, we need a new system, we should change to this type of system, right? Usually proportional representation. There's a lot of people who oppose it. There's a lot of people who favor it. But I think there's also a lot of people who don't even understand what the heck it is.
Well, right now, our system is really not that democratic, because I think with as much as 38% of the vote, you could be the ruling party.
Yeah. And you can have
38% of the vote, like basically almost 2 out of 3 voted against you. Yeah, like let's call it 40%. You get 40% of the vote. 60% of the people did not vote for you. But
again, let's be honest.
But 40% did. The next closest party was like 35% of the vote. So if you don't do a runoff, you're not getting a very good democracy, are you? But you're being represented by a party that only got 40% of the votes.
But if you do proportional representation, typically the government is formed with 40% of the vote.
Well, who says we have to have proportional representation?
Exactly. And that's exactly why my point is that they're not either system is not very good. I'd like to see a system where we get rid of the political parties. It's about time they're gone, because they're the problem in our democracy.
That ain't going to happen anytime soon.
I know.
But anyway, we could clean it up a bit, but this is sort of a backward step, I think, by Ford. And I think he realizes that McGuinty put it in only because he had to save face on his so-called election reforms that he decided he didn't want, after he looked at them and understood that his government would have the same thing as JT when Justin Trudeau promised he'd review election reform, saw that the electoral system wasn't all that democratic, or could be improved incredibly, but also saw that if he changed it to a more democratic system,
he'd
he
lose.
would have lost the last two elections that he did win.
Yeah.
So naturally, was in no mood to go ahead and now
And
change
of course,
the electoral system.
it's very easy to
his
say.
idealism finally faded quickly.
Yeah, it's easy enough to say I will do that, right? But when you actually look at it, you form a standing committee to do said thing, you come across a whole heap of people who say, "What about this problem? What about that problem? What about the other problem?" Right? And you start looking at the problems, and you kind of go, "Okay, I don't think we want to do that at this point," right?
No, and if you do recall, I don't know if anyone even recalls, it was so dull and so understated, the reforms that McGuinty said that we were allowed to vote on as in a referendum, and then gave it almost no voice at all. I remember in the workrooms where I was with the guys I was working with, they were so suspicious of this. They thought it was a conspiracy by somebody or something to take away their rights and all that. And I'm arguing, look, guys, you're looking at this wrong. Your rights may increase here. Like you might have more control over the government, you know. They couldn't see it. They just raised and thumped their chest and said,
But
this
I understand their position. I do understand their position, because the trouble is, who runs government today? You know, and I seriously ask this question: who runs government today? And the answer is lobbyists.
Well,
Commercial
yeah,
lobbyists.
but that kind of thinking was beyond them. All they thought of is this is a conspiracy to remove their rights, and they bought every argument against it without looking into it, and just got angry. They got angry right away, angry and frightened. You know how people do get when confronted with change. They get very angry and frightened and started yelling. I remember them yelling and thumping on they're gonna try to screw us and all this and all that. I says, you guys didn't read any of it, did you? You didn't read one thing of it, did you? You got, I mean, it may be good, it may be bad, but you guys are already convinced that it's a conspiracy to take away your rights, and you don't know anything about it. You don't know the first thing about it.
Yeah, you haven't
right?
bothered
But
to
it's
read it.
changed. It's changed, and now you're really afraid. So so nobody voted on that with any real conviction, because those people I know that were like my workmates at the time were just paranoid.
Yeah.
Paranoid, raging, and they didn't bother opening a piece of paper to read what it meant and what it was.
Yeah. Good morning, Mike. Good morning, Karen. Good afternoon, Rick. Good morning, Betty.
Good morning, Betty. Good morning, Karen. Good morning, Mike. Good morning, listeners.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on, Canadian travel advisors chiming in about southern destinations, particularly the question about Mexico, Dominican, Jamaica, etc., etc.
Yeah, when I first read this article, I thought when I posted it, I thought it was going to be more of warnings about
America.
the flight delays in U.S. and of course those will be resolved within days now. But it was very interesting to me how many warnings there are out there, way more than I'm used to, because doing some traveling myself from time to time, I check those sites once in a while. But I was very, very surprised that places like Trinidad, Guyana didn't surprise me, but Trinidad did. Some other places did, that the warning was out there how bad.
Well, okay, so Trinidad and Tobago, they're saying risks for violent crimes such as carjacking, gang-related attacks, and armed robberies. I guess that might become a problem if you are if you're renting a car.
Yeah, but the fact that there's gang violence, that means they say you can't wander around freely as a tourist, basically, because a gang can spot you and rob you.
Yeah, I always thought Trinidad and Tobago were one of these nice, calm places in the Caribbean.
Yeah, so did I. I
Yeah.
mean, they have warnings against Turks and Caicos, and you know what I mean. It's just
Well, in comparison to Trinidad and Tobago, crime levels in Jamaica have always been higher, much higher.
yeah, you get off the resort, yeah, but you like I traveled around Jamaica, I had no trouble, but you know I went off the resort sort of thing and just went into town. I walked sometimes right into Montego Bay, which was supposed to be dangerous. Didn't bother me. I got harassed by a couple of prostitutes here and there, but that's about it.
Hmm. Yeah, but you're the right demographic for that harassment, right? And
Yeah,
generally speaking, if you say no, they got no reason to harass you any further, right?
yeah. Well, the young ones would during the day, the older prostitutes would hassle you, but at night, if you went out and you came back, you'd have a trail of a young prostitute. A young prostitute would pick up your trail and walk to your gate, and then try to solicit a way in.
Hmm.
You
Yeah,
know, but as far as I got hassled a few times, but nothing violently.
yeah,
You know, so I don't know. Is it worse than that now? I don't know.
yeah. And that's the problem when you see these reports. You know how because there's crime in every country, right? And we've always known, for example, Mexico, there are some regions that are flagged because we shouldn't, and all non essential travel, we should avoid them, right? We've always
Yes.
known that, right?
Yeah.
These are the ones controlled by the drug lords.
Yeah.
And, and plotting a route across Mexico is problematic. We know that, always has been.
Yeah. Now, certain parts of Mexico are pretty good. I know a guy that used to just
Precisely.
drive down there all the time. He just used to take his truck and drive across the border of Mexico and drive into southern Mexico, and it was all fine. But one day, and as he's driving back from where his destination, he'd done this for a few years, thought it was a bunch of hooey about the people about crime there. He found the typical truck across the road kind of thing looked like it's broke down. When he slowed down to stop, guys with guns came out, stole everything they had, took this truck, didn't hurt them, took everything they had, and then just left them there. And they were, then they had to walk, sort of make their way to the next town and go from there. But they were, you know, robbed. Obviously, somebody knew they were coming and set up a robbery and took everything they had.
Well, they probably just pick. They just pick
At
a random
gunpoint.
place. Yeah, they pick a random place and look as if they're broken down, and they
Yeah.
look for the innocent person who slows down, particularly the tourist, because they can get away with things.
Oh, they knew they were coming. Obviously, somebody tipped them off. Okay, here comes a gringo,
Yeah.
and he's defenseless. So the guy and his wife had to walk to
Hmm.
the next place and sort of sort things out. But anyway,
Yeah.
that was that. So there, these places. There's Peru. Peru used to be a very peaceful place to go, and it's still a popular place for people to go see Machu Picchu. But I mentioned this before, probably a year or so ago, when I was talking to people from Chile and Peru. I had been talking to them, and they were appalled by the amount of crime that was rising in their countries.
Yeah.
This happened because a lot of new Chileans and new Peruvians started to show up. And I mentioned the fact that we got a lot of press about all these people moving into North America, trying to sort of siege the U.S. border in the south and sneaking through there. But those that didn't make it, those who had difficulty, they kind of disappeared into the other countries. and they're the ones that start causing trouble.
Yeah.
Because they have no income. You see what's happening in Sweden right now. Their crime levels went through the roof because of the people they let, the refugees they let into the country. Well, that is the same thing that's happened in Peru, in Chile, in Bolivia, and other places where
but
these people
also,
have come when they could not breach the sort of American fortress.
Yeah, I've also heard there are cons on the Machu Picchu trail.
Of course, it would be.
Right. Because if you look up Machu Picchu, there one of the first things you'll find is cons about it. Right.
Oh yeah, there's always that. I was surprised when I went to Siem Reap and Angkor. What is it? Angkor Wat, the huge temple there at Siem Wat.
Yeah.
I just wandered around it, no problem. But I met somebody that told me when they were doing that, a guy pulled out a knife and robbed her right in the temple, which wouldn't have gone down too well with any of the locals if they knew it, because it's a sacred place, basically, for Buddhists and Hindus. And
and in fact, actually, I went to a place. I went to a very similar place in India, Khajuraho, which has got the Kama Sutra temples in it, and those are very sacred places. But again, there are con artists out there.
Of course, there is.
Yeah,
you gotta watch your step.
Yeah, so you basically don't take any. You don't take any. Anything from anywhere else. From anybody else. You've got
these warnings. These warnings, I'll interject, have very little to do with the con artists. There's a little bit of warning of the con artists, but they're talking about being robbed, being swarmed, being robbed, being threatened. So it can get pretty dangerous. Those are the things they're most worried about. Being conned out of paying $100 for a $2 ride, that's irksome, but it's not going to hurt you.
Yeah, that's true. That's for sure. Okay. All right. Yeah. Basically, Betty's saying it's everywhere. Right. And Rick agrees. All right. Okay. So moving on. Anand opens the G7 Foreign Ministers event, and it's actually in Niagara on the Lake at the what's the place in Niagara on the Lake? At the
it'll come to you. Keep working.
It'll come to me. Yeah, it'll come to me. The one at the highway junction.
Right there at the highway.
Royal Oaks.
You're getting there.
The Oaks Resort.
White Oaks, maybe.
White Oaks Resort. Yes. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
And that's what I understand. They're at the White Oaks Resort, opening today and going on till Saturday, I believe.
Yeah. So. This is. So notice that Anand, what she did, she invited other countries. She's sort of pushing this multilateralism, obviously, as a counter move to sort of Trump's protectionist sort of ideas. So she's pushing this multilateralism. How far Canada could push it is dubious. We can use it as an example, and the other countries can agree to it. But when it really boils down to it, we have to watch what the U.S. is doing, and they're going to be the boss. Them and China, what things are going to move out of this. But how can you adjust to the new world? And it may be this multilateral approach that she's taking, and she's brought in Brazil, Mexico, Australia, Saudi Arabia, and South Africa, and South Korea, and Ukraine into this gathering as well. So she's almost made it something like a G20. It's G7 plus, basically.
Yeah.
Now we know that Brazil, of course, to attract Brazil back to the G7 type is good. They're a founding member of BRICS. You don't want them to wander too far away from trading arrangements with North America. India is you want to make good relations with India because it's got a vast market, and you want to be able to tap that vast market. Mexico too is power rising despite all of its problems. It's the fourth largest exporter of cars in the world.
Well, Mexico is important to us anyway, being a North American trading partner.
Yes. And more and more industries are placing their stuff there. And we do see that there is a great deal of promise in the Trans-Mexico corridor there, which will act as competition to the Panama Canal.
Yeah.
In this case, they've set up rail corridors to go across the narrowest part of Mexico so that they can unpack their ships on the Pacific side and reload the ships quickly on the Caribbean side or Atlantic side, and get moving. Along that corridor, there have all kinds of industries already setting up in anticipation of that corridor growing in size.
That's always something that I'm kind of thinking, well, why haven't they done that years beforehand? It's it's a very important trade link.
Well, if you look at the history of all that, they did have it. They did have it before the Panama Canal got going. That's what they did. There was transitions through that area. As a matter of fact, American mercenaries went to Nicaragua to see if they could control the transit of goods across Nicaragua. Nicaragua is a good place because it has lakes in it and so on. They could get at least some way by through water. So there was a transit point across the Panama before the canal. There was a transit point across Nicaragua, and there was one across Mexico. And the one across Mexico was doing very well until the Panama came, and then it died.
Yeah, yeah.
And
no reason not to have three of them, three Panama canals.
Well, the Chinese in particular were looking very strong at a canal through Nicaragua.
Yeah,
I have actually a canal, like the Mexican one isn't a canal; it's a transit point where ships come in, unload, then unload, and then quickly load back up on the other side.
Yeah.
In the meantime, the Mexican industry that had placed itself along that corridor could add and subtract the stuff they need.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So they could actually be a destination in that corridor. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yep. So, but the Nicaraguan idea, which is sort of died off again, but was big in the news a few years ago, they could cut a canal across Nicaragua because it's got an ample water supply in that big lake there. That's what they think anyway. The problem with the Panama Canal is several years of drought and low water has affected the ability of the canal to operate.
Yeah.
And so it's reduced the amount of the transmission. So there has to be some kind of replacement. Well, I have a feeling that the Mexican transit point is going to be a big deal.
And I think that when you look at our canal here in Niagara, you look at that, and they have adequate water supply at the top of the hill in order to supply, and it's always pumping uphill.
Well, it's coming from the Great Lakes, so there's always a high zone. There's feeder canals and things. It's always a higher zone of water coming into the lakes because we do have that ability, and so anyway, stepping up and stepping down, making stairs instead of a slope for the water is basically what they do. Mm-hmm. So we have pretty much as much water as we need for the canal. We have the whole Great Lakes, even at low water times.
But we're always pumping water up to the top of the system in order to allow, because then every time you bring a ship down the system, you're actually losing so many tons of water on that system.
No, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. It's a hydraulic system. You don't have to pump any water. You have Lake Erie, which is up here, and you have Lake Ontario, which is down there, right? So you make a bunch of steps to go down to Lake Ontario and steps to go back, the same one step up. So what you do is you close the doors, like say here, you pull your ship in, right? Open the doors, let the water out, and it goes down into the next lock. And then you open the doors and it goes down and so on. But the other way, as this ship comes out, you go in, close the doors, let the water rise up, and away you go. As long as Lake Erie is higher than Lake Ontario, you don't have much of a problem.
Yeah.
And that's the way it is. Water runs downhill, basically. So you make steps instead of a slope.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right. Okay.
But in Panama, it's different because they require more water from other sources for the canal, and they're running out of that feeder water for the canal.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, because it's you're going from sea level to sea level. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You're going from sea level to sea level, so you have to climb up and go back down. So your water source has to be above. In this case, they have a lake and reservoirs in that, but they haven't got a whole lot more water. So in that particular case, you're going from sea level to sea level, and you have to go over land.
Yeah.
So you have to have a supply of water to do
they
that.
have to pump the water up the locks, up to the higher lakes.
They may have to, but most of the time they have a reservoir up there ready to go, but they don't have enough water in those reservoirs and in those places these days because of droughts. Normally that wouldn't have been a concern. They would have plenty of supply of water for the locks, but they don't now.
Anyway, back to the G7. Anything to note in it from what you've seen, apart from the additional invites? Which I think
that's a very important aspect. I think that's a very, very important aspect. And I'm not so sure they want to send a message to the U.S. I'm not so sure they want to send a message and say, hey, look at this. We can do the multilateral thing. There might be a bit of messaging there too, but I don't think that's really the case. They know that everybody else is in the same boat as Canada when it comes to tariffs and the change in the trading system throughout the world. And I think they're looking for deals, not a zero-sum type of deal that Trump wants, but a win-win with all the different countries they can possibly get. They want to get that Canada and the other G7 countries plus G7 countries plus want to get in on better and more varied trade, because they can no longer count on the United States.
And places like India, Saudi Arabia, etc., are quite important partners to develop.
I would say Saudi Arabia less than Saudi Arabia is very important for the peace of the area, and because it's such a huge oil producer, it will always be important. But India for us is the pearl, basically. India is a source of enormous market.
We don't want to be a member of BRICS.
No, but on the other hand, BRICS is not so restrictive that it doesn't allow its members not to trade with other countries.
Yeah,
we could have a free trade agreement with India. It'd be a nice thing if we could. We'd have to be very careful there because they can produce stuff a lot cheaper than we can. But they are a rising society. They are the largest country in the world by population at this particular moment. You want that market. You want to be able to access that market.
Yeah.
And they, having such a population, they want to access ours too. So if you can get a win-win trade agreement with any of these people, it's the best way to go. Because right now what they're facing is a zero-sum game with DJT. He said, you got to give me this, you got to give me that, and you're going to take you're going to take a tariff.
And the
of course,
other
they're not paying the tariff.
India,
it reduces the availability of their goods in that market.
Yeah, the other thing to note about India, of course, is that the people we'd be trading with would be primarily English speakers.
And that will continue.
Yeah, absolutely.
That will continue.
Yeah, 60% of their country is, use English as a first language.
Well, the problem was for a time there, even Modi didn't like that and he wanted to switch it back to Indian. But there are so many Indian languages, Hindi, Urdu, so on, Punjabi, that when it comes right down to it, the lingua franca is English. And that's the language of business. That's the language of international business. That's international, the second language of just about most people of business or science in the world.
Yeah.
So I don't see that changing anytime soon. Geez, when I was in Ghana, the Ghanese from different parts of Ghana would speak English to one another. They would speak their local languages to their friends. But if a person from southern Ghana with me happened to be with me and I was in northern Ghana, they wouldn't speak their local languages to one another. Sometimes they would, sometimes they wouldn't. But most of the time they would speak English because there's 200 different dialects in Ghana.
Yeah.
So the language of communication between different Ghanese people quite often is English, even though it's not their first
and that's
language.
The same in India because you've got those that speak Tamil don't naturally speak Hindu, right? So
that's a different language. So you have
they use English as a means of communication to those other parts of India.
Of course.
Right. And that's the way it's been for quite some time. Okay. Right. All right. Let's move on. So I noticed there's a Niagara Falls, New York manufacturer that's planning a $25 million expansion. And when I see these, even though it's across the border, I see this and I know that it's going to have a positive impact upon us here.
How so?
Well, there's usually people that work across. Usually have workers that work there, right? That work across the border.
That used to be the case. I'm not so sure with the kind of border protectionism that we have now. I don't see that going away anytime soon. The whole idea that foreigners are taking our jobs, that kind of thing, is very loud in the United States right now. So unless you have a Canadian that is giving providing a job or skill that they cannot find in the States, that's not going to happen. You're going to have to get a green card.
Yeah.
No, well, I know a guy that worked in the United States for years and years and years. When Ohio Brass closed up here, he went over to the States and they said he could have his job in the States, and he did. And he asked to be paid in American money. And that was the greatest thing that ever happened to him. It was a super windfall. And he even collects his pension in U.S. money and all that other stuff. So he did very, very well. So, and there's lots of people that went over there and worked all the time. They go across the border all the time. That used to be the case, but I don't think it is so much the case now. This place opening up now, when somebody starts pointing to a Canadian saying, "Hey, how come that Canadian's here?" What do you think's going to happen?
Yeah, I get it, but in a way, it's still a good thing for the area.
Oh, it's definitely good for Niagara Falls, New York, which had really hard times, and they've had 75 years of rotten, 50 years of rotten economy for sure.
Yeah,
they sort of collapsed in the mid 70s and never did get their legs back up. At least with Buffalo fell. It was depopulated. The steel mills and other things moved out. It went from 1 million people down to 600,000. So more than a third of its population left, but it was able to be, it rebirthed itself. It came back alive. It's a really nice city right now, and it's got a future. Niagara Falls, New York took a lot longer, and I'm still not sure it's out of the woods yet. Probably. I drive through the old neighborhoods I knew when I was a young man through there.
And how many of the houses are there's no house there anymore. There's just a lot.
Yeah, the businesses and the houses are just empty, right?
Yeah.
We're complaining here about land values and housing being expensive. The irony is, if you go across the lower bridge, you could probably buy lots of land for next to nothing and build a house. you know.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Moving on. Canada ends fixed retirement at 65, starting Monday.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, isn't it?
Well,
That
it's been one of the things that a lot of people have been saying. We've been slow on it. UK has been quicker on it. You can't retire. Because of the growing age of the average age of the population, they're basically saying there's a lot of people who are spending more time on retirement than ever before. Now, on a job like yours, where it was heavy duty work, I expect that a lot of you guys would retire early anyway, and that would continue to be the case. But on other jobs where there's no need for retirement, retirement at 65 doesn't make sense anymore.
well, yes, and we go way back to Harper's time, and back then he said that it was going to be 67. It was going to be set like you saw what happened in France. They have a retirement of 62, and Macron wanted to make it to 65 or 64, some add 2 years. Well, the whole French society freaked on him, but he was right, and the society was wrong, because people are retiring and living longer. The resources of the government for pensions and stuff like that are reducing. So it makes a whole lot of sense that we can't retire until we're 67. But in this particular case, it makes it as if it's going to be better for you to retire when you want to retire and all that other stuff. But what it really means here is it's going to put sort of roadblocks in your way to retire at 65. Basically, it's going to push you. It's going to push you into 67, 68, 69, 70, whatever.
It should be a sliding scale, because if you were expecting to retire on 65 on November 10th, 2025, you should be allowed to, right?
If you've put in the proper amount of time and you're the proper age, you can. But moving forward from there, it's going to be changing. And for all the right reasons. And we saw all the demonstrations in France and all that. But what I see, and I think what everybody else sees, is that people live longer, a lot longer than they used to be.
Yeah.
When our pensions, now I can tell you this of our own pension, our own millwright pension, when our average age was 70. So the average guy would quit at 65 and live to 70 and collect his pension for 5 years, maybe 5.5. When the average age went up to 72, I was at the meeting as one of the representatives and watched everybody have a conniption fit. Whoa, man, this is really draining our system. So it went up 2 years. The life expectancy of a millwright went up 2 years to 72 years. Now I'm talking in the year 2000. So it wasn't like, when everybody else's life expectancy by that time was in the 80s, early 80s, ours was like 72. And the fact that it went up a year and a half or 2 years was a real strain on our system.
Yeah.
Then when you and then when they start clocking in how much more the guys are going to be living, like when I left and in 2014, the 10 or 11 guys previous that had died, that I knew almost every one of them in the few years before I retired, one of them made it past 70. He died at 74. All the rest, the average age of them dying was around 66. So they had all contributed to the pension plan and died and maybe got a payout, but that was a big plus for the pension plan. That's not happening anymore. The guys are living longer. Look, I'm coming close to that life expectancy of 72, which was in the year 2000. I'm surely going to make it past there. Most of the other millwrights that I know that have retired are not dying in the early 70s or late 60s. They're they're living longer. So those the strain on the system even the private systems are growing, and they have to be, and they aren't sustainable. So you have an aging population that's not contributing anymore, but living longer. It only makes sense that things have to change.
Yeah. Right. So, for example, today at 71, you just said, right, your expectation is another 16 years on average.
16. So I'm going to be 88 basically, right? At this point, right?
Yeah. On average, right?
On it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I figured. I figured I'd make it to 90, right? And so I'm trying to plan for the next 20 years, basically, my finances.
And for example, a newly born person, the average is basically 81. Females being higher at 83, and males being lower at 79.
Being born right now?
Yeah.
In Canada?
Yeah.
It's a little lower than I thought it would be.
Well, and I'd also like, so that's, so if we were to turn back the clock to 1975, for example, life expectancy in 1975 was much lower at 60 odd. No, hang on, 1975 would have been at 70 to 75.
Yeah, well, I remember when
men lower than women, of course, but you know.
Well, look, I had 3 of my 4 grandparents didn't make it to 70.
Yeah.
Okay. 1 made it to 85. But 85 is not that much of a threshold now, but then it was huge.
Well,
and so 3 of my grandparents didn't make it to their 70s. They made it to their 60s, and that was pretty typical.
Yeah.
You know, then
3 of my grandparents made it to their 90s. They all
yeah, but that was atypical, wasn't it? If you put in the if it was among the average, it was very atypical for them to make it that far.
Exactly. So they.
How old were your parents? How old were your parents when they died?
My parents were in their 80s.
So they still had a pretty good long life.
Yeah.
So
3 of my grandparents I know died at 92.
Yeah. But you see, 3 of my grandparents didn't even make it to 70. 1 made it to 85. But I see this as going up. There are certain things that affect this. Chemicals among farmers reduce their life expectancies. The industrial waste and stuff that most of us exposed to, that will reduce our life expectancy. Those who worked in the industry. That will reduce our life expectancy because we don't know what's in our.
Actually, I think that you don't know. It's fair to say what you said about life expectancy. If you work in an industrial unit, you also don't know what the life expectancy is in an office because you assume an office to be a nice, clean workplace, but it often isn't.
Well, most offices, the problem with office workers is sedentary work that causes their arteries to clog up and things of that kind. So the sedentary type of the sedentary type of things that they're doing is the thing that exposes them to shorter life. That causes heart disease, lack of exercise. It used to be a time when it was thought to be a noble thing that you didn't have to slug it out. And the fact that you lived a life of ease was a kind of a social, a kind of a credit to you. Like, you don't have to work for yourself. You can have servants do this. You can do that. And what happens is you fall prey to your own sedentary lifestyle.
Well, you don't have servants to do it. You have machines to do it, don't you?
Nowadays, yeah.
Yeah.
But you fall prey to your own sedentary lifestyle.
You do.
And how many guys how many guys go out there and start shoveling their snow? Older guys start shoveling their snow, have a heart attack and die, right?
Yeah.
Because sedentary lifestyle hasn't prepared themselves for a sudden bunch of exercise like that. Where somebody like me, I don't have to worry about that so much, at least right after retiring.
I don't worry about that
because I've had all kinds of exercise my whole life.
I don't worry about that. I just flip the switch to snow and drive over it.
There you go. Techno snow removal. It's going to be your sideline now.
No, it's actually something because it raises the level of the car if I stick it on snow, and actually gives me that opportunity to drive over it.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, so
but it does. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not really unexpected the move in retirement age. I think what you'll see is that you'll see a slow movement of this over the next 10, 15 years. So maybe it'll end up at 70 in 10 or 15 years time.
I think basically with what I see with the standard of living, etc., I don't think it will be possible for many people to retire at 65.
Yeah.
By the time my sons get there, 30 years or so from now, it might not be possible for them to retire. They may not have enough of a nest egg to do it.
Yeah, it's no more freedom 55. It's freedom 60 or freedom 65, right?
Yeah, it's more like freedom 99, but the way it's going. Yeah, so there won't be, and unless you are very astute at planning and have sources of money which we can salt away for your future, which is very rarely the case. You have moderate amounts of money to salt away for the future. That's taken care of by your pension plans and other things that are doing that for you. Yeah. Then you will likely get to the age of 65 and realize that that's too young. You're going to have to move into start. Remember, the reason why they came out with 65 is so they can't exploit the worker past the age of 65. When the average age of, they wanted everybody to have at least 5 or 6 years of retirement, 7 maybe, and maybe 10 years of retirement before they die, because that's the way they thought. That's why they hit that 65 threshold. Yeah, they didn't want everybody to work until they were dead. So they gave them the obligatory the obligatoriness of it was not to the worker, but to the companies that and governments that employed them. A little later on, that became a bit of a problem with people who were healthy enough that wanted to keep working. Yeah. Plus, it also became a problem when life expectancies grew, and 65 was just not old enough. And I'm afraid that's it. So
the question by Rick about how does that work in Ontario? At this moment, I don't know. There's not enough information in this article about this. It's something we're going to have to investigate and find out further.
It's going to be nationally. This is a national program. It doesn't. Yeah. Ontario really doesn't factor into this much more. It'll be all federal policy. Yeah. There may be some provisional tweaks here and there, but it'll be the whole country basically. Now they're selling this in this article as to how wonderful it is and how beautiful it is, and it's now your choice and all that. But if you really want to pare it down, it means that the government realizes it cannot sustain pensions at 65 anymore. Yeah, it will have to go to 67 or some other kind of number. It's couching it in a way of saying you could do a lot better. There's a lot more options. There are more options open to you, but the real thrust of this is to take a lot of the strain off the government and thereby the taxpayer. Yeah, because these prices are going to go higher and higher all the time because people are living longer.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Okay. Okay. Anything more on that one? We haven't really got any more time for anything else.
No, I don't think we do. I think we're just about done. And Of course, I will always bring up Gaza. Another couple of Gazans got killed the other day. It's almost a story that's got to the back burner because of all the hoopla that's going on in the States and maybe here as well, but budgets and all that other stuff. But there is still a tragedy going on in Gaza. There is nothing being formed. The U.S. peace deal has yet to have any kind of substance to it yet. It still looks like Netanyahu is pulling the strings in Washington, and that will continue because the last thing he wants is the end of the war. As long as that war goes on, he's protected from the crimes that he's committed, the corruption crimes. As soon as the war ends, he has to go to court, and he will be thrown in jail because the corruption charges on him are pretty deep. Now, he might be protected by somebody somewhere along the line, but he is a corrupt official. His son's corrupt, all that kind of thing. This is not the first time he's come up with corruption charges. And I think Donald Trump learned from him because he tried to stack the court himself, Netanyahu, or stack the chips towards himself by manipulating the government. He tried to erase the authority of the courts, and he almost did it with losing 11-10 in some sort of thing. If you can look up these details if you want, but in the meantime, poor old Gaza, there's still no journalists in there, no outside journalists, and we don't know if the food and water and everything is going in there well enough. And of course, the place is completely lawless now. So every bullet that's fired, they blame on Hamas, and that's not the truth. There are gangsters in there making money. There are other political factions looking to get.
Not a nice place to be.
Yeah, and there's family feuds going on there.
Yeah.
There's a lot more there that they don't want to tell us because as long as they can blame Hamas for everything that kind of suits them, okay, I can throw some more bombs on someone. So if a criminal faction tries to rob something and start shooting up, they say, oh, that's Hamas, throw a bunch of bombs on Hamas, nowhere near where that happened, kind of thing. So we will see what we shall see, but I am pretty worried that the world is losing focus on this century's greatest genocide. And I don't know.
Unfortunately,
anyway, without further ado, I bid you adieu. Have a great day.